This is my spoiler light review of Alien Covenant. This is the latest in the now lengthy series of Alien movies, which is set 10 years after Prometheus and 20 years before Alien. This is the second episode in what appears to be a sci-fi horror philosophy series set in the Alien universe. Before I watched this movie, I watched Prometheus again, and then a number of reviews and explainer videos for that movie. So I had a lot of fresh information in my mind before seeing this one. But I deliberately avoided the prologue films before watching this movie, or any commercials or advertisements, given how the whole film industry as a whole is terrible about promoting upcoming movies, with too much of what is shown never appears in the film or is a letdown for the series. And from what I've heard online after watching this movie, I think I made a good bet. This is one of those movies that honestly you may end up needing to see a director's cut to make more sense of it for anyone that actually picks up the DVD or the Blu-ray. The prologues, in my opinion, should be in it from what I understand, the clips I've seen from them. And you definitely need to have watched Prometheus before watching this film to get the most out of it. This is basically a sequel of the spin-off that is Prometheus, which isn't a direct prequel of the upcoming movie Aliens. But this is an unexpected detour. We see a little more aliens in this film, which is good. And we also see it in the title, but it's not quite the Alien film you may have anticipated. Now, I personally enjoyed this movie, and I took my oldest son with me, and he enjoyed it as well. It's a very beautiful movie, as expected, given what I've seen in the previous film. But they took visuals to yet another level with the use of even more aerial shots and gorgeous landscapes. And there's a super high level of detail, unlike the super gritty nature of, the first Alien movies, that came out that were a bit more realistic, more practical effects, and, they were filming lower quality equipment. So that's just the nature of the industry. But the opening scene, for example, was set in a perfect living room, and many of the shots on the spaceships at different points in time were pretty incredible in terms of like the level of detail, and they paid a little homage to some of the earliest films made in the late 70s and 80s. And another thing, it's weird how the films are being named after the ships, in these movies. And I'm not really sure where Covenant fits in thematically with this film, although I do appreciate that the ship is like an ark of sorts filled with, 1,000 or so couples. And I like how the travelers thought that they were essentially headed towards heaven, for lack of a better phrase, but they found hell. So that's pretty interesting. And one thing I have to point out is the movie was slow going at first. The opening scene, it wasn't really obvious that scene would be terribly relevant to the rest of the film until much later on. It seemed completely out of place, to open up with that. It also seemed like the dialogue was really forced in that scene and was overly philosophical, almost to a fault. Even with the abrupt action scenes that occurred later, like when you first get on the ship and you see the explosion and that the action that occurs from that pretty much gives way to another 30 minutes or more of dialogue and exposition and relatively slow going. So it was kind of tedious until about almost an hour into the film. I somewhat like the direction that this series is going, but I feel like there's no guarantee for anything. Given the way that Prometheus ended, and now this film, there's no way to know if anything you see here is going to even matter in the next movie. In my opinion, don't get your hope up for any sort of any of the remaining characters who lived at the end of this film to mean anything in the next film. Also, there were a few times that aliens were really in your face, literally and figuratively. There were at least 3 times where I couldn't get my hands in front of my face fast enough, and I've not been scared or startled that many times in a film in maybe a decade or more. I know the Alien series is well known for having a strong female protagonist, but I'd like to see one of these movies with a strong male protagonist. And I would like to see one of these more like a Schwarzenegger type of character, that takes names and kicks butt. It doesn't have to be an over-the-top Duke Nukem character, but I would like a strong male character in these roles just to throw things off. David in this film, or even Walter, they do not have strong characters. They have interesting characters. David in the previous film, Prometheus, had a strong character, very interesting, if not over the top. But I just think that it's time for the Alien series to try to dabble in other types of characters to base the films on. Now I'm going to keep my criticism down in this review because it would take away from the overall impression that I've had with this film. But I'm going to have to tell you, CinemaSins is going to have a field day with this movie. I'd like to see, just for example, people do a lot of good things in this movie, you know, and have the alien show a lot of versatility or intelligence by getting around those things. You know, I won't bore you with too much, but the characters did so many stupid things, one on top of the other, on top of the other, that it just defied description that people that are so intelligent would do so many dumb things. And it's an old trope that's getting older. So you're going to see more criticisms like that in the rant video that I'm going to make next. And I'm going to go into more detail about all the criticisms that I have with this movie. But that'll sort of take away from this review, which overall I would say is very positive, but there are a number of nagging things which I think sort of turn this from a good film into a mediocre film. It's got some highs, it's got some lows, and I think that you'll enjoy the film if you haven't seen it yet, but I wouldn't get my hopes up that this is going to be on the level of the first two Alien movies that came out in '79 and in the mid-'80s. Anyways, it's a good film, if flawed, and in many ways I think it's a little bit of a letdown, and it makes me concerned for the franchise, but I'll leave that for next time. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great day.